Have you ever experienced a moment of joy, a daily win, or something that you would consider a massive success? And then you can't wait to share it with somebody. You can't wait to share it with your sibling, your parent, your friend, family member. And then somehow, some way, somebody outdoes you and they have something bigger and better to talk about. And you just can't help but compare yourself. And it ruins it for you. And you feel a little bit less than, and it taps into your self-worth and all of these different stories that you've told yourself over time. Or have you had the worst day, the day from hell, the day that you just want to get to the end of it and it be over, and you finally get a little bit of time to yourself, and for some unknown reason, you decide to go on Instagram and look at all of the people that you think are better than you. And there's somebody who's just got a new car or just got a new job or has just had a really cool photo shoot because they've just lost weight. And you just, again, feel less than and you feel worthless, and you start to create a little story about why you're not good enough, because what you're doing is you're making their success about your failure. Truth is, me too. It's happened to me and it will probably happen again. This is what happens when you decide to pursue something. If this is the case, then today's episode is for you, because I'm going to do my best to offer some helpful insights on what we can do about comparison and the comparison trap in general. Welcome to the Johnny Lawrence podcast. I'm Johnny Lawrence, and today I'm talking about comparison, which many say is the thief of joy. And being honest with you, I would agree with that, because it's stolen the joy away from me many, many times. But I want to start with a story. So many of you might know that I am in the midst of currently editing a book, but for many years, 2 years in fact, I was writing a book. And then I got to a point where I thought it was ready to show to publishers, and I sent it out to lots of different publishers. And in the same day, from 2 pretty big publishers, I got a knockback. I got a no. It wasn't what we're looking for, which is fine and totally understandable. But then that evening, I get home and feeling a bit sorry for myself. My wife makes me something really nice to eat for dinner, which was really cool of her. And I decided that I'd scroll on social media, and what do I see? 2 of my good friends in the industry have got a book out. They've got a book launch. And immediately I start creating stories about why they're better than me and I'm not good enough and I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that. You see, comparison is the emotional cost of progress. And on today's episode, I'm going to look at it from different perspectives. Stuff that's a little bit more helpful. There are emotional responses, reactions that in some ways we can't really help. They're formulated from the stories that we've told ourselves, from the experiences that we've had in our life. But what if those stories are wrong? What if the story that we created when we were 8 years old, 12 years old, 18 years old, what if that story doesn't work for you anymore now that you're 20, now that you're 30, now that you're 40? So we're going to look at that. And we're going to look at the evolutionary roots. So comparison used to be a survival instinct. It used to be the way that we used to survive. We would be part of a tribe, a group. We stay together because it was safer. There were lots of formidable animals and threats out there that were threatening to take us out at any given chance. So staying together in a big group was a good idea. So we would compare ourselves to each other as a way to understand our status in the group, our position in the group. And this allowed us to understand how we should behave in order to stay safe and accepted within our group and to not be outcasted or ostracized in any way. So it's there for a reason. Problem is, in the modern world, it's not quite the same as it once was. And unfortunately, it can lead us to start turning inwards and creating really unhelpful narratives, or it can lead us to shaming ourselves, or at least experiencing shame. Very often it leads to imposter syndrome and also paralysis, which means that we don't choose to move forward because we're scared that we're not good enough and that we're going to fail. Something that I experienced quite a lot in my life, in my career. But there are 2 types of comparison. There are upward comparison, which is where you compare yourself to somebody who you believe is ahead of you. And then there's downward comparison, which is when you compare yourself to someone that you believe is behind you. Now, upward comparison can motivate or discourage, depending on the internal dialogue. But then downward comparison can start to lead to some really undesirable behavior. It can start to lead to arrogance or a feeling of being better than someone, and you start to forget what it's like to be somebody that's in that position because you perhaps are a little bit further ahead. So both have their advantages and both have their pitfalls. But it's important to understand when we're doing it and in which direction. There are 5 main areas where we compare ourselves to others. The first one is body. We're not feeling quite the way we want about the way we look without our clothes on. Maybe we feel we've put on weight. Maybe we feel we've lost too much weight. Maybe we just feel like our body shape isn't the way we want it to be. And then we go on to social media or we pick up magazines. And out there right now, it's really easy to find somebody who's got the perfect body that's telling you all the things that you should do. And they're really piling on the pressure most of the time because they're trying to sell you something. In that type of marketing around the body, as somebody that used to be in the fitness industry, I've spoken to lots of companies, lots of people where their main objective in their advertising isn't necessarily to sell you the product directly, it's to make you feel inferior first, to tell you that your stomach isn't flat enough, to tell you that your arms aren't big enough, that you're not something enough, and that coincidentally, they have the solution. And all of us now live in a world where we compare ourselves to people that are generally airbrushed, or they've created the photograph that we're looking at, and we compare ourselves to it and we feel less than, and we feel ashamed of ourselves, and we start to become insecure, and it leads to all sorts of problems, doubts, arguments, tensions, conflicts, and all of that sort of stuff. Then we've got relationships. We compare our relationships to others, the perfect couple, the couple that are, you've just had a day where you and your partner aren't talking and the kids are fighting and the dog's just weed on the carpet. And then you go on Instagram or you ring a friend and they're out on their boat and they're having a great time in the sunshine and everything's great. And did you know that so-and-so was just doing their homework on the decking whilst the other one is just practicing their dance routine? You know, all of that sort of stuff. And you just feel like you're not doing it right in some way and that your relationship is wrong and that there's problems in your relationship because, frankly, you're comparing your relationship to somebody else. This is the thing about relationships. They're all different. Everybody has different relationships, so thank goodness for that. And what's important is the communication that you implement between you and your partner, the boundaries that you put in, the laughter, the things you laugh about, the things that you share in common. And it's so easy to look over at your partner and then look on social media or wherever and start to make judgments, start to think something's wrong because you're not doing what they're doing. Parenting, it's another one, right? And I just sort of said it. I think for me, I remember quite a lot of clients I spoke to during lockdown, and every parent, including myself, had to struggle with homework and homeschooling. And quite often there would be cases where you'd be talking to a friend and all their kids have done all their homework and actually they're finding it a lot better during lockdown or during homeschooling. And they're really getting on, and we're just shouting at our kid and wondering why they don't want to do the homework and stuff going wrong, and you don't know what to do next, and all of those different things. I remember an occasion where my wife was so stressed that she shouted at one of the kids, understandably for a good reason. They were being very, very tricky. And unfortunately, the microphone on Zoom, where the school were still on the line, could hear and said, "Mrs. Lawrence, would you mind turning off the microphone?" And my wife just wanted to die. She just would go in the kitchen and allow the world to consume her. We do laugh about that. You know, it's just one of those things. It was a stressful time, but we compare parenting. We think that we're not doing as good as other parents. There are lots of parents out there as well that have lots of well-meaning advice, but it doesn't necessarily work for you. We compare our parenting. And it's hard. Businesses, jobs, careers, another thing that we compare ourselves to. Whose business is doing better? Their business is doing better because they've got 100,000 followers on social media, or they've just boasted about an award they've got. Whatever it is that's going on, the job that you've got that comes with loads more money, but you don't necessarily talk about the stress and all the other stuff that comes with it. The career that you secretly hate, but you tell everybody you love because you don't know what else to do. What I'm getting at here, and I might be putting a slightly negative spin on things, is that things don't always look like what you think they do. And you might notice that there's a common denominator amongst all of these things: the body, the relationships, the parenting, the business, job, career, and that's social media. Social media is this perfect tool that we use to compare ourselves. We go on there when we're most vulnerable, when we're feeling rubbish about ourselves, and social media has become this really great tool that we believe makes us feel better. It's part of the addictive nature of social media. And we go on there to get that dopamine hit, but then inevitably in the mood that we're in, we stumble across somebody that we feel is doing better than us. Somebody that's got a better body than us. Somebody that's in a loving relationship that's way better than ours. Somebody that's parenting their kids perfectly. Someone that's got that great job, that successful business, or that inspiring career. And then we make their success about our failure. And we feel horrendous about it. And it's just more evidence of why we are not good enough. All of that is a choice. But we don't know it because we get swept away in the tide of the emotion, the riptide of emotion that drags us under and bashes us from side to side, and we feel completely at the mercy of it. And here's some stuff I'd like you to remember. Comparison rarely accounts for context. Different starting points in life, different privileges, different goals, they're all relevant. All of them are. Where somebody starts in their career, there's that saying, it took me 20 years to become an overnight success. I've been working for 40 years to be told I'm lucky. You don't see the grind. You don't see the place that people start. Some people don't start at the bottom. They start very, very far ahead because they've got influential parents, or they've got money in the family that's helpful, or whatever it is. They just know somebody that's going to help them with a career. And it's not to begrudge it, but it's not fair on you to compare yourself to that situation, because you're not comparing. That's not what's going on. It's that saying, apples and oranges, right? You're not comparing things equally. And there's, like I say, there's different privileges. There's different goals. You might look at somebody and assume that they've got the same goal as you, but perhaps they do, perhaps they don't. You don't have all the context. And there's a danger of comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. I'm sure you've heard that. It's a very well-known saying on social media. But here's what I think is really happening. You're comparing what you know about what you're feeling inside to what you perceive someone is experiencing outside. You get on the school run and you see that parent get out of the luxury car wearing the really nice clothing, and you think, wow, because you're in your jogging bottoms and you haven't done your hair and you're just feeling a bit rubbish. And you compare yourself in that moment. You know that you're experiencing inside yourself with what you think they're experiencing. When actually what you don't know is, although they're well dressed and although they've got this great car and they look like they've got it all together, they're experiencing financial problems. One of their kids isn't well. They're having relationship problems at home. And you don't know these things because you're comparing what you know about what's going on within you to what you think is going on with them. And there is the trap. There's a timeline trap too, because there's lots of times in life where you believe that you're late, that you're doing things too late in life, and that you're behind, and that you're failing because of some random milestone that you've just plucked out the sky. Happens a lot with women. They think that they should be married and have kids by this point. I've heard that a lot from clients and family members and friends, that they've been left on the shelf. But who's to say that you're supposed to be in a certain position, that you're supposed to have a relationship or have children by a certain point in your life? Who come up with that? And do you want that? I've known people that think they're behind, and actually they don't even want those things. They're not interested in that at all. But yet that timeline trap still catches them out, and they still build a whole narrative about why they're not good enough, all over something that they don't even really want. It's so easy to get caught up in that stuff. The other thing as well is when you are inevitably scrolling through social media, and perhaps you have had that bad day, or perhaps you just had a meh day where nothing much has happened, you're a bit bored and you're starting to make a bit of meaning in your head about what that might mean. And then you scroll across somebody and they're doing something and it immediately hits you with envy, perhaps even jealousy. And in that moment, whether you realize it or not, you have a choice. You can look at that social media post in two different ways. Yes, you can say animosity. You can go to envy and tell yourself that you don't like that person, or that they're this or they're that because they're doing this and actually that, and get all up in your feelings and all angry and all disheveled about it. Or you can recognize that envy, that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a signal. It's a call to action. There's something in that post that's triggered you. What it's telling you is it's something that you want. It can become a goal. It can become an aspiration. It doesn't have to be animosity. It can be aspiration. It is a choice. or it can be a choice if you become aware of it. Looking at that feed and getting angry about it and making their success about your failure and telling yourself that you're not good enough and that they're this and that they're that, that's not helping. That's not helping you at all. But looking at that and saying, okay, I haven't got that yet, but I didn't realize how important it was to me. I'm going to make that a goal. I'm going to make that a goal, whatever it is. The other thing to think about is this. I'm so fortunate because I get to see behind the curtain of a lot of successful people and people that are aspiring towards goals. And I see a lot of similar traits. But what I always see is this. What you see in others is what you have within yourself. I've seen people start at varying different points in their careers, in their life goals, whatever it is that they want to aspire to do. I've seen them start at 100 different stages and they do it. If they don't give up, you can't fail if you don't quit. And when I say quit, I don't mean quit at something, I mean quit on yourself. What you see within others, you have within yourself. If someone else can do it, then that's the evidence that you need that you can too. Will it be the same? Will it be easy? Will it be hard? All of those things, they're always different. But you can achieve it. You can. You just got to not give up on yourself. You've got to be kind to yourself, compassionate to yourself, and disciplined. There's a lot of hard work that comes with success, and it can be boring at times and repetitive, but you can do it. And that's the point here that I'm trying to make. You are unique. You are the only person who can do things the way that you do, and that matters. There's only one version of you in this world. That's ridiculously amazing. There might be people that look a bit like you, that act a bit like you, that have a similar lifestyle to you. There might be lots of similarities between you and other people. But nobody can be you. And it's much better to be the first best version of yourself than the second best version of somebody else. You are unique and that matters. And you have to start realizing that. Focus on the things that you do well, not the things that you do badly. You can improve upon the things that you do badly, but focus on the things that you do well and keep doing them well. Keep logging that evidence of why you are good enough instead of looking for reasons why you're not. Because at the end of the day, the only person that you should be comparing yourself to is the person that you were yesterday, not somebody else's today. When you look in the mirror and you compare yourself to the person you was yesterday. And when I say that, I don't mean, am I a millionaire yet? Or have I got the dream body yet? Or whatever it is that you're trying to aspire to. I mean, yesterday I didn't drink enough water. Today I drank enough water, winning. They're small goals, small wins, but consistency. That's the key. Set yourself up to win, not to fail. If you want to be better than you was yesterday, find a small goal. Maybe you got to answer all the emails today. Maybe you got to do your exercise today when you didn't get to do it yesterday. Maybe you got more sunshine today. Maybe you got to practice 5 minutes of mindfulness in the car. Maybe you drank more water. Maybe you didn't eat as many biscuits. Whatever it is, find a way to be better than you was yesterday. Something small, something achievable. I remember I went to a speaking event and this speaker got out of their car and they were driving this amazing car and they looked immaculate. And he walked into this room with confidence. And it was very, very, very early on in my speaking career. And I wasn't as confident at speaking as I am now. And before I'd even got to talk to this person, I'd formulated a story about who they were. I'd looked on their social media and seen that they got hundreds and thousands of followers. And I was just like, oh no, you're not going to be as good as this person. They're going to smash it. You're not as good as them. This is terrible. And then a few minutes before they were supposed to talk, and I had talked, I'd already gone out there and talked and I'd done really well and everyone was happy and I was happy and it went great. I was pleased with my speech. And then this person who was better than me, in my opinion, at the time, had a panic attack. And it turned out that they always have panic attacks before they do any talks. And actually, I went over and spoke to them and helped them through that moment. And then I realized that everybody's got something. Nobody's what we think they are. In a weird kind of way, everyone's blagging it. Everyone's pretending, everyone's doing their best. Life is difficult, and it's really easy for us to look over at someone else and know how we feel inside with all our insecurities and all of our perceived flaws and project that onto someone else and why they're better than us. Because that's the way, for some bizarre reason, in that moment, we want to feel. And we don't have to. It's a choice. We can recognize that behavior and we can choose to ignore it. Focus on inspiration, not imitation. See success as proof of possibilities. See it as proof of the fact that it's evidence that you can do it too, that you can aspire to it. And it might require patience and it will require consistency and determination, but you will get there if you keep going. Learn to zoom in. What are you doing better than you did last year? What are you doing better than you did last week, last month? Find that small thing that you are doing better and hold on to it because it's valuable. And then use comparison as a mirror, not a measure. Ask yourself, what's it revealing about your desires? This comparison, what's it telling me that I want? Are you using comparison to fuel action or feed insecurities? What am I doing? Start becoming aware and questioning these behaviors that are happening autonomously. Don't get caught up in the riptide of life. And here's a little practical exercise that I often use myself and my clients have found really helpful. And it's, for some bizarre reason, when we are deep in our self-doubt, we always look for ways to compare ourselves. And usually, one of those ways is social media. It's the easiest and most accessible way. So replace the scroll with the soul. It needs work. For 1 week, every time you feel comparison creeping in, journal. Who triggered it? What emotion did it cause? What do you need more of in your own life? Who triggered it? What emotions did it cause? What do you need more of in your own life? Use it as aspiration, not animosity. Comparison is natural, but it doesn't have to control you. It's about progress, not perfection. And real growth happens in the shadows, not in the spotlight. That is something that I have experienced many, many times. This is a real topic that a lot of people struggle with. It's something that comes up for everybody, regardless of who you are, people that you wouldn't imagine. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So feel free to go over to social media, the Johnny Lawrence Podcast on Instagram, and tell me your thoughts. Give me your opinions. Tell me things that you've experienced, stories, anecdotes, whatever you want. Thank you for listening. As always, check out the website, johnnylawrence.co.uk. The Slavery of Addiction documentary is still on YouTube, still doing well, still climbing in views. If anyone's having any challenges around that, whether it's yourself or whether it's somebody that you care about, it's a really helpful documentary for understanding addiction and its complexities. Thank you for listening today, and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Johnny Lawrence Podcast.